Yeah, I don't know, man. You ever just feel like life is just catapulting towards some greater purpose?
Pampered fat cats with bloated ego. We are the only DJ crazy enough to tattoo Jackie Brown on his ass.
This is Michael Mann, and I ride with
Extended Clip.
Welcome to Extended Clip. It is episode 473, and I'm one of your hosts, Eddie Averill.
I'm Malcolm Baum.
I'm JT White.
And today we are returning to one of the great films in the history of the podcast / the history of cinema. This is one that we talked about in the early days. We always hinted at it. And then we did a series on its auteur, and we, kind of squeezed it into an episode with a few other topics at hand. But we figured that it was long overdue to give a full episode treatment to the masterpiece of the Farrelly Brothers, my favorite movie of the 1990s, and a film that I put on my ballot for the Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time poll in 2022. There's Something About Mary. JT, if I recall correctly, you had not seen this film before we started doing the podcast.
Yeah.
But in the time since, it has become a JT classic.
Of course. I mean, all the Farrelly movies, that's been one of the great joys is discovering them. And now they're just, in the canon for me. Just some great, great stuff. And There's Something About Mary is, I don't want to say obviously the best, because there are days where I feel like there's a strong stuck on you argument. But There's Something About Mary's just such a perfect movie. And again, getting all those, the first time going through those movies, I think we recorded those outside at one point, or either we're
yeah.
So here's the thing, not the Something About Mary one, but the first installment of that Farrelly Brothers miniseries, which is lost media, by the way, much like some of the early silent films of John Ford and some early Ernst Lubitsch work, I believe. The original episode that was a miniseries entitled, I think it was The Brink Job. I think that was what we were calling it, Brink Job or something like that. Something like that. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I think it was based on the movie The Brink Job. The first edition of that miniseries was on the Farrelly Brothers, and the first episode of that was recorded out of doors because we were suffering from the psychosis depicted in Ari Aster's Eddington. That was 2020 COVID psychosis. And so we decided that we would do an open-air al fresco podcast to defeat the coronavirus, which lasted one episode.
It's funny. I kind of forgot that we did that because of that. I was just I think we were just chilling that day. We were just smoking outside. We used to smoke a pound of weed before. That was the original Extended Clip pre-game process, is to get so high to the point you can't speak that well.
But you have your notes.
Yeah, you have your. You're
you have your notes that are just writing down things that are happening in the movie, just in three words, and being oh yeah, no, this is helpful.
Yeah, in our earliest rambunctious days, we were kind of the currency of film criticism.
Which, I kind of wish that was more of a bigger demand. I wish more people kind of wanted something like that. But.
Well, I think Jonathan Rosenbaum kind of held that torch, no pun intended, for a long time. He had a lot of drug-infused writing, and then he kind of got woke after a while, and people were like, well, if that's what it does to your brain.
He became liberal.
That would be a great guide who's just doesn't just skims over everything ideological in Jonathan Rosenbaum's writing up until Bush becomes president. Yeah. And he's this guy's a liberal.
That guy definitely exists somewhere.
Yeah. Just over his head for the first 20 years of the Chicago Reader capsules,
Yeah, exactly. Just if you just read the paper, I feel you can't go too long there. And wait a minute. What the fuck? Some pinko commie liberal?
one of the just thinking about newspaper criticism is kind of a tangent, but I always think about Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle, I believe. His rating system, he had a unique rating system in that it was a little animated figure, and it was like this guy, and if he hated the movie, the seat would be empty. If he thought it was like a 1 or like a 2-star movie, like he's just sitting. If he loves it, the guy's like applauding in his seat. And I'm just imagining like in 2020, some guy opening the San Francisco Chronicle and the little guy is wearing a COVID mask. He's like, what the fuck?
You said animated. You meant like a little cartoon drawing, right?
Yeah, cartoon.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, animation and cartooning
maybe
are
it
different
was,
arts.
the early blog counterpart of the San Francisco
I always
Chronicle.
read it on my iPad, so they animate certain parts. So, yeah.
I don't know why we're talking about our inspirations of film criticism as if there was some sort of wrapping up element going on here. We're talking about There's Something About Mary, the 1998 film by the Farrelly brothers. So here's the thing. We were talking about long-term stuff because the Farrellys have been in our lives as long as we've been a podcast, basically. It was the first thing that I kind of put JT on as like a forcible thing to be in the podcast. And Malcolm, the first time I ever heard your voice was guesting on another podcast talking about the Farrelly brothers, the legendary late great Body Double podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just something that's always been there. And Malcolm, how have the Farrelly brothers either grown or just changed in your estimation over the years, would you say?
I mean, yeah, when Peter released Green Book in 2018, I was so moved by the evidence by the appearance on that podcast before. I've always been a fan of their work, and always even before you start being conscious about movies, these are just like kind of the raunchy comedies that you want to watch when you're like 10, 11, 12 years old. But much like anything, the more I got into it, the more we kind of studied them for the podcast. It's they've only grown in my estimations, and going through some of these movies, I've rewatched so many of their movies, in the time since we did the original series back in like 2019. Shallow Hal, I mean, that's a body positivity classic to me now. This one, I feel like we're all in agreement that this is our favorite by them because they're just operating at such a high pitch on this one, and there's just something special about this one to kind of steal the title's parlance there. But love the Farrellys. I feel like I had a Farrelly brothers list on Letterboxd. I was kind of rage baiting, clickbaiting, and it was like Farrelly brothers greater than Coen brothers, and that was the because that was like the joke, like everyone's always ranking the Coen brothers movies. And I've since retitled it to a more formal, just Farrelly brothers, because we don't need to discuss anyone else when we're talking about them.
And yeah, there's literally no reason to bring up the films of the Coen brothers other than the fact that like their filmographies overlap chronologically, and
they're brothers.
They're brothers. Cue the theme song to the Wayans Brothers show. They're funny and they're.
We're brothers. We're happy and we're
The
singing.
Farrelly brothers, as I learn more about film history, their place in it seems to just make a lot more sense to me. Where the 90s in Hollywood is, to me, like such a height of basic studio technical and stylistic proficiency. And we've been talking about this since the very first episode of the podcast when we talked about fucking Scent of a Woman, and just like the cinematography and the score of that movie, which are so strong in such a just ridiculously stupid movie, and so the Farrelly brothers represent like the auteur that fits into the system, as in the classic Hollywood days, where they're just taking advantage of all the tools at their disposal. Because you watch any behind the scenes thing with them, they're the first to admit they don't know what they're doing, quote unquote. You know, they don't know like the grammar of film style and stuff like that. They don't know the technical stuff. But it so happens that their first few films were shot by Mark Irwin, who was Cronenberg's DP during the 80s, you know, so they're in very good hands there, and they have great soundtrack use. You know, this is like insane music supervision jobs with the billions of needle drops in their movies, a style that starts as just a cacophony in Dumb and Dumber, where they're relying on people they know are great, like Todd Rundgren is doing all of the original music for that one, and it follows all the way up to the god Jonathan Richman doing the music for this one, and a lot less cacophonous, ridiculous needle drops in this one than there was in Dumb and Dumber. So it's both taking advantage of the technical abilities of the people that were in Hollywood at the time, as well as just a truly God-given talent for writing comedic scenarios and characters and directing performances. That's what they're really great at, which, as simple as it is just making funny shit happen in a movie and making the movie feel like a movie, basically. You know, these narratives that they weave are often very classically constructed, you know. In this case, like, this reminded me a lot of like a Billy Wilder movie, as does like Stuck on You, you know. They really feel like the kind of longer, almost classic Hollywood comedies of the 50s and 60s, like those of Billy Wilder, that were very writerly, and you just remember lines and characters and comedic situations more than you might remember the images per se of like a Tony Scott, to take a contemporary of the Farrelly brothers, or a Max Ophuls to take a contemporary of Billy Wilder, you know.
Yeah, and, you know, for kind of what they maybe you would say kind of like lack in kind of, you know, visual prowess, you know, they'll write something that will leave a lasting image, you know, a gag that's just like, whether it's cum on the edge of an earlobe, or, you know, a dog biting someone on the crotch, you know, you know, maybe the angle on it isn't exactly so inventive, but just what was written and what's come to life in the screen itself through the gags are definitely visually memorable.
Yeah, and it's like the angles might not be inventive, but they're pretty perfectly composed most of the time, I feel like, especially in these earlier films, and also Stuck on You, which is the one that's like really handsomely shot in scope. But something about Mary, I think the setting does a lot of heavy lifting in the visual beauty of the film, as does just the star power, as it were. So I think we're deep enough into this where if you don't know what Something About Mary is, sorry, we're almost 15 minutes in. This is a film where Ben Stiller wants to track down the old flame from high school, with which he had a traumatic incident that left him hospitalized on prom night. And little does he know, he's entering this nearly conspiratorial web, this almost Lolita-esque chain of creeps that are all lusting for Mary, this girl who he fell in love with over the course of two interactions that they had in high school, you know, a decade and a half later. And it becomes clear that this woman is not, while retaining her own sense of character, which I think is more in part of Cameron Diaz as a performer than the Farrellys as writers even, she also works as a symbolic character, a metaphor of a character about what men kind of see in women, and how a woman that makes a man feel even like a little better than usual, he will just idolize all out of proportion so many times and act out on the worst kind of, you know, to use more contemporary buzzwords, toxic male impulses, you know. And it's a film all about that, and the humiliation therein. And within those themes, it is reminiscent of the work of Elaine May. You know, it's all just about like schmucks and bozos owning themselves, you know, and that is why it's absolutely no surprise that the Farrelly brothers remade Elaine May's best film, The Heartbreak Kid, and cite it as one of their favorites. I think this film does definitely share a lineage of male humiliation with that one.
Yeah, I mean, right from the beginning, to speak to male humiliation, I love like the cold open feeling of just like a build up to like all-timer like dick joke with having his shit stuck in his zipper there,
which is a 20-minute like action set piece style thing. The way it's dramatically constructed is like a Mission Impossible or a James Bond movie where you have a big 15 to 20 minute set piece and then flash forward to the actual drama of the movie. But with this, it's a 15 to 20 minute dick joke.
You know, rewatching this, you know, the way this movie is structured is, you know, so impressive, where you have this 20-minute cold open, and then, you know, we get into what Ted, the Ben Stiller character, you know, him kind of coming up with the idea to track down Mary, and then the narrative kind of shifts into the Matt Dillon character's perspective, and then, you know, back to Ted. I was really admiring that this time around. And, you know, the opening where we just see Ben Stiller as an awkward teen. It's just, you know, just the like the radiance of nostalgia mixed with like Ben Stiller playing like 20 years, you know, his junior, being like a guy who's obviously too old to play that role, and just being so awkward like that. Even before all the zipper stuff starts, like that's just funny in itself. Just kind of his mealy mouth, you know, brace faced, you know, way of talking just really cracks me up.
And her first encounter, that is Mary's first encounter, Cameron Diaz's, that is, with Ted, also speaks to a long-running theme in the Farrelly Brothers movies, which is representation of disabled people. You know, like she has her mentally challenged brother Warren, who she helps out, and he's getting like bullied by some kid, and Ted stands up for him, and you know, there are jokes played out of that, and I think people are a little, let's say, quick to jump on this film when they're just thinking back on it from nostalgia or whatever. Like, yeah, it's pretty offensive in that regard. And I'm always the guy who's like a little too quick to be like, actually, the Farrelly Brothers care a lot about representation of disabled people and do a lot of charity work and make sure to cast disabled people in all of their movies. But you know what? We're not even going to get any further into that on this episode.
None of that woke shit, all right? No.
Well, what I will say, though, about this setup, when they do bond after Ted stands up for brother Warren, is they're bonding over, you know, Mary talking about how Joe Montana should have been the first overall pick and how the Niners are going to go all the way, you know? And it's a very, like, post Howard Hawks type woman here, where, you know, the Hawks women of old were always like sporty and able to do the jobs of men just as well as men, and that's why the guys in those movies were so attracted to the women. And then in this one, Cameron Diaz, you know, she loves the 49ers and is watching draft tape, you know, she has a great swing and goes to the driving range every day, it seems like, and, you know, at the end of a date offers Ben Stiller to come in and watch Sports Center, you know, and it's like, it's a mix of that type of character that was in those films of Howard Hawks and the thing of toying with the audience and all of these male expectations of what like the cool chick should be, only for that to get blown up in their faces because all of these men are really only looking out for themselves.
You know, just reflection on, you know, kind of like Cameron Diaz being like the Hawksian dame, you know, who, you know, knows about men's stuff better than, you know, even men themselves. You know, it's back in the 30s, the 40s, you know, like, you know, it was, oh, the woman, she could, you know, she fits in with the military and, you know, the workforce so well. And then, you know, globalization happens and all the factories are gone. And then she watches sports the best. That's the most coolest masculine thing imaginable.
Rosie
And
the Riveter is like, she knows who Steve Young is.
Rosie the Riveter is giving you the best player props on FanDuel now. That's the equivalent. But I mean, it is it's done. All jokes aside, it is like the way they kind of use like her knowledge of sports, and then the way that integrates with another character later to be revealed. It's just really, really great in how it kind of just really captures the attention of the male mind there.
And the escalation of that opening set piece, I can't speak highly enough of. It's just like one of the funniest things in the history of cinema to me. The way it goes from Keith David, like just checking it out, and his reactions of holding back the laughter. And first of all, just setting up Keith David as the ball busting dad is great.
Yeah.
Perfect casting. Like this movie is full of just like pitch perfect casting, and that is one of the many examples. But the way it escalates to like the mom comes in and then the cop comes in through the window and then the fireman comes in through the other door is just the funniest thing ever. And as he's getting, thrown on the gurney, the brother saying he was masturbating. Like, it's just the greatest comedy of humiliation set piece I've ever seen, frankly.
No, that set piece is a real masterwork. Even kind of before we get into the bathroom, just kind of the, Ben Stiller not expecting Mary to have a black stepdad, and the comedy of that with Keith David, and then kind of his interactions with Warren and him trying to do something sweet for him, only for it to backfire, viciously. And it is just a great comedy of errors. And even when he's he does the deed, he's zips up his dick, just like him kind of like looking at the doves in love out the window and trying to be romantically minded, and then they fly away and it looks like he's peeping on Mary and her mother, and it's just like all these things just stack on top of each other and escalate in such a way that it builds to the hilarity of the very traumatic injury that the Ted character sustains. It's truly some of the best comedy filmmaking ever.
Yeah. So we flash forward to the late 90s, the present day, as it were, where Ben Stiller is still in therapy about this with his, this is a great anti-therapy movie. I was thinking about another one, Matrix 4 is another great, like, don't trust your therapist movie. This is also part of that canon where Richard Jenkins in an uncredited role just kind of like slinks back in at the end of a monologue. It just makes a joke about truck stops or the bathhouses of the 90s.
Yeah, no, I was really taken, like, aside from just like how fucking sick that line is, like Richard Jenkins like kills it like with a very little action he has to do. Because he comes in from just having eaten lunch, and he has a napkin like tucked into his shirt, and just like slowly and carefully like wrapping it up to try and like make sure he doesn't hear is so fucking funny.
God, it's so good. And by the way, this is the first diversion between the theatrical and director's cuts, by the way. The next scene I'll mention, the introduction to Chris Elliott, which in the theatrical cut goes straight to Ben Stiller and Chris Elliott, his buddy in Rhode Island, who turns out to be his longtime romantic rival, Woogie, the scary ex of Mary. In the director's cut, they're like doing pitch and putt at a park first and make a bunch of gay jokes and then go to the backyard. And the other biggest thing about the director's cut is the scene where, jumping ahead like 45 minutes, when Matt Dillon goes on the date with Mary. At the end of it, when a traditional date would usually have a man ask for a kiss, he asks to grab her bosom instead. And I like had only seen the director's cut of this movie forever, and so I watched the theatrical like recently because that's the VHS tape that I have, because I have this movie on every format. And I was shocked that that wasn't in it. I was appalled that that wasn't in it.
I watched the theatrical version this time,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've watched the director's cut maybe once. I've mostly watched the theatrical one. And isn't there like way more Jeffrey Tambor in the director's cut? Like,
Yeah, there's also like the introduction to him. It's another thing where it's just an extended introduction. When Matt Dillon first goes to Miami, I believe in the theatrical, it starts with them already in the car driving against the ocean.
Yeah.
And then in the director's cut, there's a scene where Tambor drives up to the sidewalk to pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, the director's cut, this shit was going almost in like a shortcuts level,
It's like 2 hours, 20 minutes almost.
yeah, of
No,
like, character ensemble piece.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, even the theatrical being like, is it like just a hair under 2 hours?
Yes.
I believe so.
But
yeah.
like for the director's cut, like it just, I don't know. With a comedy, I always like I'm looking for something I want to say in like the 80 to 90 minute range. Like something like a romantic comedy, I feel like usually like goes to like at least 2 hours because they have to like sort of I don't know, set the stakes. It's a little bit slower paced. But with something like this that is like, I don't want to say gags first and foremost because there's so many other great things, but like something that is so gag heavy, like to have a cut of this movie that is like goes that long and it's like you're not tired of it or anything is just, that's impressive in its own right. And I mean, obviously it is like a romantic comedy, but far from structured like a conventional one.
I mean, I would go as far to say that the longer cut of this to me is the definitive one, and thus the longer cut is my favorite movie, basically.
Yeah.
So to link the plots together, as it were, because I've been a little bit skipping around. That's a good way to phrase it. Dumbass. That's why I write now. Woogie, Chris Elliott, the god of comedy, if you don't know, check out his show Get a Life or his work on the David Letterman program, sets him up with a private detective played by Matt Dillon, by the way. This is a part of our Matt Dillon series on the podcast this month. We had to go with his best movie, not just his best like performance, but the best movie he's in. Both, I think I would say, are true. He's introduced with his pants down.
Yes. One of my favorite character introductions. It's so funny.
It's so simple. All he has to do is stand up from behind the desk, reveal that his pants are down. Comedy, I understand.
And watching this, in kind of like in knowing what the plot's gonna be, it is funny. Like kind of just the way the Chris Elliott character behaves. Like you could kind of tell he's just has bad intentions the whole time. And speaking of like kind of that scene where him, Ted, and the Chris Elliott character Woogie are kind of just chilling out in his house, like that scene's so funny to me too, where like he kind of has like that kind of almost like offbeat conversation with his wife about like getting to bake some cookies and like there's kind of like a weird push and pull to it, and then after they leave, Ted's like, you see, that's great, like I just want something like that. like just like like your wife to
so
get you
demonic with Chris Elliott's like, no, make the Toll House. She loves that.
And then the way like the Matt Dillon character kind of reacts to Ted's wishes, it's like, oh yeah, this is like a classic stalker case. Like I'm stalking this woman for this guy. A criticism someone could have of this is that like it lets its like Ted character kind of win in the end, despite kind of the bad behavior. But like the movie's calling out like his behavior like at every single turn. There's like not one point where the Ted character is not getting like basically ridiculed by everyone, which is pretty funny.
I mean, yeah, if you're saying that it like rewards him at the end, sure, it does, but also like realistically, first of all, it's the end of a comedy movie. Second of all, if you're taking it a step further, like to their relationship, extrapolating it past the ending, it's like Yeah, you think he wouldn't have like a slightly different mindset after the events of this movie?
True. Yeah. Went through a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, Matt Dillon's down there investigating the Mary situation, and of course falls in love with her because every man who encounters her does. That's when he meets another man who's fallen prey, Tucker. And this is where I came up with the Lolita connection, because he is straight up Peter Sellers in Lolita. Like, he is the other creep who's just like, what the fuck is this creep doing?
Yeah.
And he's a great character, the guy with the terrible British accent and the crutches, and the physical comedy with that is so fucking good. Like when he's in Mary's office dropping the keys on the floor and stuff like that. And of course he's later revealed to be some dirtbag Rhode Islander named Norm, who has like the most hardcore New England accent of anyone in any Farrelly Brothers movie probably. And that's a hard thing to surpass for some of these movies, you know.
Even outside Providence.
Yeah.
It's even more
Well,
so than outside
The funny
Providence.
thing is that guy, which I guess is maybe to the point that he was able to effectively do the British one so bad. The guy that plays the Tucker character is an English comedian, I think.
That makes total sense to me. That he could do, and props to him. Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense that he could do like a bad
do
British
fake
accent.
British. Like it's like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
actually speak like with like an English accent, you're like, oh, okay, well I can like adjust this, ratchet it up a little bit.
But when he, as Norm, is at the bar where they're trying to kick him out because he never pays his tab, says to the waitress,
Fuck you, Norm.
I like it when you talk dirty to me, man.
the greatest line read in the movie.
Well, that scene is so funny to me because it just proves that this movie goes so many different places and kind of just has, you know, scenes that you wouldn't get in other romantic comedies, where it's just like the Matt Dillon character and the Tucker character are kind of like, they're both like on the outs with Mary, and there's just a scene of them like hanging out together and like commiserating over her, being like, oh, she's the best, man. Like
doing dirtbag scheming together.
Yeah, like it's like that's just so funny. Like that we get like a private moment with these two characters.
I love the images also of Matt Dillon with his spying equipment when he's like outside of Mary's apartment with like the weird radar gun thing and the giant binoculars. Just great props. Like that's just basic comedy, basic visual comedies, giving him hilarious big goofy props while he's wearing his typical like Miami dirtbag floral shirts and stuff like that.
He's got the most powerful microphone known to man. With that, got like the almost looks like it got like a radar on it.
Yeah.
But it is. I think like I love the him spying on the Mary character. Like those are some of the funniest scenes in the movie. Like one of the biggest laughs for me is when he's like kind of spying on her. While she's with her friends, you know, and he's kind of like getting into the conversation like he's one of the girls, and like, you know, Mary tells a funny joke and like he laughs along with them at the other table, you know. Oh my god, that's just
and
such
all of them are just dead silent staring at him. So good. Her making like a remark about her vibrator in that moment, I believe. And so like the spying stuff is great. You know, that's where we learn that Mary goes to the driving range every day, and a fantastic location work with Aqua Golf. I mean, that's just like something I'll never forget from the first time I watched this movie, even if it didn't turn out to be a great movie, which from the first 45 minutes, how could it not? But once you get to Aqua Golf, that's just like an image that will always be in my mind for some reason. I just will never forget that as a location. I think that's just such great location work there. Yeah, simply put enough. And speaking of location work, when Matt Dillon comes back to Rhode Island to tell Ted the results, you know, the false results that Mary is a roller pig, as he said, who weighs about a deuce and a half.
a deuce killed me on this.
Deuce and a half. That's at this bar in Rhode Island called the Hot Club that me and Nate Fisher went to one time when we were shooting EFIS. We took the train to Providence, Rhode Island, and walked around something about Mary locations, including that one.
A pilgrimage.
Yeah.
A real pilgrimage.
Yeah, we saw that. And then the inside of the Hot Club is where Ted is talking to Woogie about Matt Dillon and everything.
Yeah.
They play it maybe as a different location. I don't know. And then also when he's moving his boss's brother's furniture. We did walk by that apartment because, of course, Nate is like a GeoGuessr type movie watcher and could spot that from a mile away.
That's a valuable resource. You know, that's like a service people would pay for. I mean, yeah, there's just so many random subplots in this movie. That's hilarious to me, and like Stiller just struggling to carry like a whole fridge on his back and just having the worst time ever. And then, you know, the whole hitchhiker subplot is just so, and like, you know, just getting a display case for the comedic stylings of Harland Williams.
Yes.
And it is like no one else but the Farrellys would include this in their optimistic, bright, you know, romantic comedy.
7-minute Abes. I mean, I don't know what else to say about the 7-minute abs guy. That's like the funniest thing. And everything in this movie is the funniest thing ever. But 7-minute abs, and that, of course, bringing the truck stops or the bathhouses of the 90s statement full circle when they stop off to pee and Ben Stiller trips upon a raid / stakeout for a giant orgy that was happening between truckers, I guess.
Yeah. And then that, you know, unfolding into like Stiller getting interrogated and like being like held, like, because the Harland Williams hitchhiker character was a murderer and he has a dead body in the sack, and it's just like
who else but the Farrellys would then put a button on that by it being covered by Cops Live being watched by Chris Elliott getting a blowjob from his who watches Cops while they're getting head? That's so weird.
Everything is such a perfect kind of closed system like that where it like all ties together, and I just love the way like those I don't know, either it will be like a recurring gag, like the bathhouses of the 90s, like popping up and turning into like its own little shtick there, or just finding out who Woogie is. And same thing with the Brett Favre reveal. There's just like so many opportunities where like the first time I was watching the movie, it's just like kind of, they're like, okay, this is whatever kind of like inessential like plot details that you need in this kind of movie. But I think at every opportunity, they're going to squeeze a gag out of just like the regular like table setting, like narrative work that you have to do to like move like the story along in a comedy.
And I can't say enough about Matt Dillon's bullshit artist work. I mean, this is like one of the best dirtbag performances of all time. When he, after spying on Mary, then, you know, walks through all of what he learned to use against her, basically, between pretending to have Nepalese coins and architecture blueprints because she said those things in conversation, and, of course, most offensively, due to Mary's charity work with mentally handicapped people, we get the iconic line that is preceded by, to me, an even funnier line, "My passion is my hobby."
I mean, just the comedic device of like Matt Dillon like being too dumb to impersonate the type of guy he's trying to be, and like having to come up with stuff on the spot about, you know, who this false persona he's putting on for Mary, and just like putting in like a D- effort every single time, like putting in the effort that's just like, it's pretty obvious that this guy is a phony. And, you know, then the Farrelly brothers, they very intelligently integrate that into the plot too, kind of that kind of stretch there where he's kind of creating another lie to patch up his other lies.
I mean, when he is like really pursuing her, and it's set to who's that power pop artist?
Joe Jackson, I think.
Yeah. It's set to Joe Jackson. Is she really going out with him? Just electric stuff where he's just physically pummeling these disabled guys in a flag football game. Just horrifying stuff, but it's hilarious. And speaking of power pop icons, the use of Jonathan Richman and Tommy Larkins, his longtime drum duo partner, as the Greek chorus of this movie, with, I believe, one additional scene in the director's cut, maybe. So you see them like 4 or 5 times almost. Amazing. I mean, so many people's introduction to Jonathan Richman and the work of the Modern Lovers, one of the great rock bands and rock singer-songwriters. I'll say this. I saw Jonathan Richman in concert like a year ago or so, and there were 2 people that I ran into at that concert that I think are noteworthy for the Extended Clip podcast. One is a person who came up to me and said, I found out about Jonathan Richman because you put him in the podcast, because I had played some Jonathan Richman music.
Oh, hell
interstitial. Yeah. I was like, wow, one Jonathan Richman fan, that's all I need. People don't come up to me about the podcast, by the way. So that was like a hyper-specific moment of kismet. The other one was that John C. Reilly of Boogie Nights and Magnolia and Walk Hard was standing behind me for the whole set, and I didn't notice.
Just guarding over you like a guardian angel. That's amazing.
Did not notice until we were walking away.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then, it was pointed out to me by multiple people.
That's honestly, I feel like that's the best. Like, if I were to be next to a celebrity at a concert, I kind of would want it to go like that. In a way.
I guess he told someone to put their phone away too, which was cool because it was a no phone concert, but it wasn't like, it's
Dave Chappelle.
They don't have
comedy.
the budget for the yonder bags like Dave Chappelle or even Bob Dylan at the older Rough and Rowdy concerts.
I mean, if people knew how much waste those yonder bags do to the ecosystem, I think it's like
10 ChatGPT requests per yonder bag.
We need to get Greenpeace on the yonder bag situation, man. It's real fucked up.
The peak of Matt Dillon pursuing Mary, of course, though, is one of 2 man versus dog encounters in the movie. When he gives the dog too many tranquilizer pills, too many painkillers, too many Xanax, whatever it was, after hearing that the dog is the true test of whether or not a man is good. That is Mary's neighbor's dog, Magda, a great side character throughout this movie and kind of the voice of reason for Mary. So Matt Dillon kills a dog with a drug overdose and then resuscitates it by zapping it with electrical wires, and that is, mirrored about an hour later when Matt Dillon and Norm / Tucker are trying to sabotage Ted, Ben Stiller's date, so they give the dog a bunch of speed. And Ben Stiller has to wrestle the dog, including doing the Three Stooges eye poke maneuver and many WWE style finishing moves.
I mean, these are just scenes you could replay in your head and you just start laughing thinking about them. Just the imagery of Matt Dillon taking the wires out of a TV remote control to jumpstart.
I think it was a lamp.
A lamp using the electrical currents of a lamp to Frankenstein a dog, jumpstart a dog like it's a car. It's just, I mean, words escape me how fun.
And again, I think it's just so impressive how creative both of those sequences are, because you're literally getting essentially the same setup. I mean, obviously there's kind of the companion to one another, the making him nod off and then speeding him up, but to have to stick the landing there and not have it feel oh, okay, they're just fucking recycling this gag is so amazing. Maybe you can watch a man just beat the shit out of a dog for hours, and that's just comedy. But
And it's like, I don't know, like, because that's something you hear like a woman say, like if a woman has a dog, be like, oh, you know, it doesn't like men, you know, it sniffs out like the bad ones. It's like just like taking that, like just being so dumb that you take that like so seriously to the point where it's like, we got to sedate the dog so it makes sure. And if the dog likes me, then I'm like, it's guaranteed, like we're dating for another month, you know. And it just shows like, you know, the embarrassing kind of thought pattern of like an obsessive man who's like, you know, idealizing a woman, you know, to the point where it's like making him sick.
So it's implied throughout that there was one like man who got away from Mary, the perfect one, that ended up saying some bad stuff about her brother Warren. And this, of course, was a lie perpetrated by Tucker, the creepiest of them all, perhaps. And that man was Brett Favre, who, you know, people who keep up with the sporting news might find it ironic that Brett Favre is painted as like the ultimate Boy Scout golden boy, all-American, because he's a quarterback for the Packers, you know, at this point in time. And he had just won a Super Bowl, you know, probably when they were writing this movie is on that Super Bowl run, 96. Mm-hmm. This comes out 2 years later. I don't know about that timeline, but whatever. Of course, Brett Favre is by far scummier than anyone involved in the production of this movie.
No, it is, I think that has aged the funniest because I feel like when we first covered this movie on the podcast, it was like 2020, right? And the news of him like defrauding like the Mississippi government out of like
welfare
funds
Yeah.
to like build like a volleyball court or some shit like that, like something just real heinous. And like he's since kind of become like a quasi conservative mouthpiece, you know, for
because he was just doing small business.
Yeah, he was getting involved in small business, as they call it.
He was like, that welfare money's got to go to small business, not those welfare recipients like my volleyball court. God, he is a real piece of shit, man. You know what's really funny is that I got 2 football jerseys for my birthday over the years when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because I was like a Dodger fan above all, but I still like watched football pretty religiously on the weekends with my dad, and we still watch every Sunday now that I live here again. The 2 quarterbacks that I loved that my dad got me jerseys of on like my 9th and 10th birthdays were Brett Favre and Michael Vick.
I knew it was going to be those. I knew it was going to be Favre and Vick.
So, wow. And I wore those until like late middle school too. Like I probably wore those up until high school started. And then maybe the Vick thing happened in like 7th or 8th grade for me. And I was like, all right, well, definitely not wearing that one anymore. But yeah, the Favre stuff, I mean,
also the sexting too.
Yeah, the sexting thing, that was just funny. Like that was because the first time we talked about this movie, that was probably the implication when we said that Brett Favre was a bad man or whatever. It's just that he had a sexting scandal, you know. Yeah. But now he's an actually bad man.
He's a fraud. No, but it is. I mean, you know, but back in the day, before you knew all the stuff about you know, him personally, Brett Favre was a pretty sick quarterback, you know, so I get it makes sense within the context of the movie, you know.
You look at the advanced numbers, you know, he's not that great. He's kind of a highlight merchant.
But that's what I'm saying. He's a gunslinger. He takes risks. That's what's fun about
That's
him.
what Mary needed.
No, but she does say that
she's a Niners fan.
Yeah, you know, does favor the more successful quarterbacks.
Now, JT, did that hit for you harder with the Niners taking down the Eagles in the playoffs this week?
I could not, like, I think I was watching Something About Mary instead of that Eagles playoff game.
You knew they were going to lose?
Yeah, no fucking, like, without a doubt. Like, they're fucking...
I love JT is, like, becoming as miserable as I am about his teams, where he's just like, yeah, they're going to lose. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to watch.
Well, it's just, like, I watched the games all season. Like, they barely, I mean, saying barely scraped by and to have that record, obviously, whatever. But, like, there were clearly problems, and so it's like, okay... I think we're going with Mary on this one.
Yeah. It's all about my Rams. No, just kidding. I'm not a Rams fan at all.
I would like that for you. I would like for you to settle down with an NFL franchise.
Malcolm watched me watch the Rams win a Super Bowl here in Los Angeles and can testify that I felt nothing.
Well, what team does your dad like?
He doesn't like a team either. We're both
Oh, you're
atheists.
just football enthusiasts.
You guys
Yeah,
float above it all.
yeah, we just both like the league. We just like the league. That's how it's always been.
We like good play. We
Yeah.
like good play
There-
on the
Yeah,
field.
you are one of the guys that could actually wear just an NFL hat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I used to have that fucking hat, and it was funny because it was in red too. No,
Ooh.
I think the
Really?
the Rob Lowe one was black.
Yeah, very
I had a
NFL
red
ref
one.
standard hat, like with the Rob Lowe.
Yeah, I PA'd on an NFL on ESPN commercial when I was like 19, and I got a red NFL hat out of it.
Dude, that seems like an evil piece of merchandise to
It
me.
was.
For some
At
the
the
red
peak
NFL hat.
Dude, at the peak of anti-NFL wokeness, I literally gave it to Goodwill, and it's one of my most shameful things. I was like, I should have kept that. It's such a funny hat. Like, why did I give it to? I was clearing out space, you know,
Yeah.
and I was like, I really don't need this fucking red Trump-style NFL hat right now.
The MAGA NFL hat, you know?
The peak of like people still trying to convince you that Kaepernick could sign somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
You're just like, you know what? I can't get involved in this
Yeah,
conversation.
no, I'm not. I can't do this anymore. Speaking of can't do this anymore. So Brett Favre is where this movie wraps up, and you could tell that we're talking about football instead of my favorite movie ever for a reason. I'm giving this 5 bullets. This is my favorite movie, as I've said many times. And I'll write something long about it someday, but maybe in a booklet for a movie, a 4K or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, hey, I don't know. I'm
Let's
just putting
go.
it out there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wish casting. But yeah, 5 bullets for me, easy. Malcolm.
Yeah, 5 bullets for me as well. It's just for all the reasons you mentioned, just kind of like this kind of web of like weird characters all obsessing over Mary, kind of like taking the traditional rom-com of, you know, taking like two persons, you know, a love of like two people and kind of extrapolating of, you know, all of Mary's like stalkers and, you know, a pizza guy who met her once, you know, decides to, you know, shift his entire persona to a educated British man, disabled educated British man, and just kind of the insanity that all that kind of obsession produces, and the comedic scenarios, and just the great casting, you know, like even beyond like kind of the star power, you know, people like Lin Shaye and Harland Williams kind of getting like these random roles just kind of reminds you of the brilliance of the Farrelly universe at large. And there's just, and also something that I feel like we've liked about the Farrelly brothers movies, you know, despite its kind of insanity and depravity at times, it's just, there's just something so bright and optimistic about the movie, and it's, you know, it's reflected in the Miami location and the sunny cinematography, and just watching these movies make you feel so good, you know, and this is maybe the one that makes you feel the best even. So yeah.
And the locations between the snowy / overcast New England and Miami also brings to mind that like most Farrelly Brothers movies are road movies in some capacity. And multiple of them are just that, like, you're in New England, now you're somewhere where it's sunny. But, you know, Dumb and Dumber's a road movie, Kingpin's a road movie, I could go on. But this one and Stuck on You, I think, are the two that really just, like, know how to plant their feet in two separate locations very well, you know?
While also giving you a little bit of road action,
Yeah,
you know, with
absolutely.
the hitchhiker and, you know, the great montage of Matt Dillon arriving back in Miami. You know,
Yes.
you still get some rubber to the road.
JT, any final thoughts and a rating on something about Mary?
I'm gonna go 5 bullets. Just obvious masterpiece. Like, again, a lot of just talking about this movie, you list gags, but like they're so classic and iconic that I feel like you're laughing along just even remembering them, and that's a testament to how just like purely successful it is on that level alone. And beyond that, like I don't know, all the stuff that we've said about like its relationship to ideas that men have about women, lampooning that, like it's just amazing. And I feel like the course of the podcast in general, like the first time we like talked about this, along with like Sandler stuff for me, like it fucking sucks that they just don't like, and I mean like the Farrellys were doing comedies a level above everyone else, of course. But it just sucks that like the baseline level of like studio competency for like shooting a comedy means like that everything is going to look like complete shit. And obviously there are like outliers, but I would say like there are outliers in the sense that like I don't know. We've talked about how like funny like PTA is, but obviously he's not making like straight up like gag comedy movies. And like there are other filmmakers and like comedians, like I like a lot of the Tim Robinson like projects that he's been doing, and they have like, I don't know, a little bit more like visual flair, going for like the idea of something else. But like studio produced comedy movies are just like either completely non-existent or just like are overlit to shit and look like complete ass. And I don't know. It's revisiting the '90s classics. It's I don't know. Could you imagine just strolling on down to the multiplex and you could just see There's Something About Mary? That's insane.
A golden age. I mean, the 90s, I as I've said before, you know, it's like this mini studio era-esque run of Hollywood. And you know, with this self-conscious bent toward auteurs in almost in a cap or undercase A way, with like they're still corporate structures behind them, but it's like these like fake indie movies are everywhere, all the Miramax type movies and stuff like that, and that paved the way for a lot of good comedy movies. And frankly, the comedy movie itself as a genre, like, I don't know, if you're really not, unless you're like totally not adhering to the rules at all, if you're, let's say, a Tom Green or a David Wayne, like a Wet Hot American Summer type movie or a Freddy Got Fingered type movie, inverse respectively, if you're really trying to hold true to like what a comedy movie has and is, always has been, kinda, it's like, it's hard to do it with contemporary film style. I think it's as easy as that. Like the contemporary film language is just much weaker these days, and frankly, the evidence is right there in the solo works of Peter and Bobby Farrelly. Like, I'm an apologist for something like Ricky Stenicki, but I'll be the first to admit that like the film as an aesthetic object is fucking dog shit in comparison to There's Something About Mary. And it's not like There's Something About Mary is a De Palma movie, you know? And so I think that it's all just about like outsiders and independent people creating their own things, because right now the studio picture just doesn't really lend itself to comedy anymore. I mean, like, you know, if PTA wants to lean in and make just a straight up comedy, that'd be great, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. You know, in the post 2000s era, like 2010s, 2020s, I would say the best comedy is like shorter form stuff, frankly. I think comedy as a like recorded comedy, I go toward more like TV and even podcasts, honestly.
Definitely. I mean, it just shows, you know, like everyone's been saying, like kind of basic kind of Hollywood competency in how they made their movies has gone down, and there's more of an idea of just constant budget reduction and kind of you know, these studios kind of you know, recognizing you know, maybe we don't have to put, like, maybe we could get lucky with the comedy and not put as much money in. Whereas something that's great about Something About Mary, it's a big, expensive, expansive movie with, you know, just obviously you know, a lot of great skilled people working in the crew. That's you know, shown by its very fantastic end credit sequence, where
the ultimate victory lap
with the Build Me Up Buttercup lip syncing, and it's just something like that. Like, comedies are relegated to like streaming services now. They're not, you know, they're mostly not even being, you know, invested in theatrical releases like that. And to like put, you know, it'd be cool if PTA made you know, what is it? What was the comedy movie? De Palma made with
Wise Guys?
Wise Guys. It'd
Oh,
be
if
cool.
PTA made a Piscopo movie?
Yeah, if he made a movie, a Joe Piscopo movie with like Jack Black or something like that.
Well, by then,
Yeah.
Piscopo had exited SNL, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like if he made like a Taron Killam comedy or something. I mean, he has the SNL ins right there. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I hope PTA doesn't make a straight up comedy. I mean, I have my faith in him to make whatever,
Yeah.
obviously, but the nightmare vision of it being all these like 2010s and 2020s SNL players doing PTA comedy, kind of a nightmare. kind of a nightmare, to be honest.
No, trust me, he's gonna convince Kenan Thompson to retire from SNL, and he's gonna have his breakout role, and it's
As
gonna
the
be.
What's Up With That guy.
I would watch a What's Up With That full movie.
Dude, PTA doing the Attention Teachers and Students movie.
But the onus shouldn't be on him or anyone else to like revive the comedy movie, because that's not
Yeah,
what.
no, of course not.
What
It's not what
it
he
would-
does.
Yeah, it's not what he does, and it's not what made those movies so great.
Yeah.
It's like it was that there was a robust system in place to produce them. Is why we got even outside the Farrellys. Transition into like, I don't know, like Will Ferrell movies or something. There was
Sure.
just an infrastructure for that stuff in like the early 2000s and the 90s, and it's
And of course, in the golden age, that's
Yeah,
whenever I say
yeah.
classical, that's what I'm referring to. By 30s to 50s, it was really factory assembly line style production of comedy movies that were all quite well made. You
Yeah.
know, and a lot of them weren't that funny, but they're all quite well made. And the ones that are funny, man, those are some of the best movies ever.
they really up their reps. They're making like 12 movies a year. That's like 2 of them were great. They were masterpieces.
I feel like a lot of cinephiles almost poo-poo comedy. Maybe this is a bold assumption, but like, maybe it's because Billy Wilder is like taught in film schools so often that like the deeper auteurist hardcore circles of like film Twitter younger people, they gravitate more toward visual filmmakers than like situational filmmakers, I guess. Which is funny because I feel like everyone still name checks Hawks, but Hawks isn't exactly a visual filmmaker. If you're splitting people between visual and situational, Hawks is definitely on the situational side.
Definitely.
But Billy Wilder also definitely on the situational side, and I feel like people almost knock him for that. But, I went back to The Apartment recently. That's a hell of a movie right there. I know that's not
Yeah.
your favorite, but like
True.
you like other Wilder
Yeah,
comedies.
I love other Wilder movies, and it's give these kids time.
Yeah,
They'll come to appreciate the situational. It's like that bullshit saying like, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you're heartless. But then I forgot the second half. But
It's
how
something
it goes.
about like if you're not. Hold on, I got this. If you're not Brett Ratner when you're 20, you never had any fun, and if you're not
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre when you're 60, you don't have any wallet. You don't have any wallet. Jesus Christ.
the
Well,
Brett theory.
Yeah.
On the Brett theory, I think it's time to wrap things up here, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a great 5 years and nearly 500 episodes, but I think it's time that we just kind of put the kibosh on this whole operation. I think it's very clear at this point that, like, with JT's upcoming feature that he's already filmed, and Malcolm's short that's out there and upcoming feature parentheses S and my writing, that this is kind of taken a notch down in the priority list for all of us. And frankly, I think I could recognize that as the person who listens to this podcast the most via my editing. And I think that it's time for us to move on. Is it not?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of episodes. Our podcasting bones are weary. We got a great backlog if you ever want to go back through it. And I'm very proud of the work we've done. But it is just we've done it for a while, and it just seems like it's time.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that we're making this decision live right now while we're recording the podcast. But I agree. It's like I will miss the most just routinely talking with you fellas about movies, joking around. It's always been fun to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited that we all have new projects on the horizon.
And to anyone who's listened over the years, if you're listening right now, thank you for listening. And of course, anyone who's ever participated in the show.
Yeah.
You know who you are. Thank you for helping me out over the years. The friends I've made through the show. I'm not going to do this bullshit. Goodbye, everybody.